Welcome back to Bible Bites. Hi, I'm Gabe. Thank you for joining. Today we're going to cover John chapter 11. Now, if you've been following along, you know that the book of John is basically following Jesus along his path from the start of his adult ministry around about the age of 30 up until the time of his crucifixion and everything that comes beyond. In each particular chapter, we've been covering a major event or a major miracle or some kind of significant event that marks part of Jesus' ministry. In John chapter 11, we get to one of the biggest ones of all, which is the resurrection of Lazarus. As I've already kind of spoiled it for you, what happens, the big deal in this one is there's a gentleman by the name of Lazarus. He is the brother of Mary and Martha. Now, this is not Mary, Jesus' mother, and it's not Mary as in Mary Magdalene. The New Testament has a lot of Marys in it. I don't know why, but that's just the way it worked out. This is a different Mary. Actually, this is the Mary that we'll find out later is the woman who cleansed and dried off Jesus's feet with perfume when he was coming to visit with his disciples during for lack of a better term, a Bible study, if you will. So she was deeply committed to believing and worshiping and following Jesus in all things, believing he is the Christ and he is the Messiah. So this is a woman who is very much on board with Jesus's mission and ministry. And so the Lazarus we're talking about is Mary's brother, who Jesus also knew, even though he's really not mentioned prior to this, at least not in the book of John. And so what happens is a big miracle. Let's get into it. So Jesus is going around the different towns, preaching, delivering his message, doing all the things he intended to do. Meanwhile, back in Judea, Lazarus falls sick, gravely ill. The book doesn't necessarily say why he becomes sick or what type of ailment he has, but we do know it's a very serious illness and he's dying. So Mary and Martha send word to Jesus saying, "You've got to come. We know you have God's power. We know you're the Messiah. If anybody can save him or prevent him from dying, it's you." And he says, "Okay, I got this. Message received. I'll take care of it." But he doesn't go right away. He waits 2 days. And then he says to his disciples, "Okay, that's long enough. He's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. It's not a problem." Now, his disciples don't know this, but Jesus does know this, that Lazarus died. And they start to head back anyway. And it takes roughly 2 days to get back to where Mary and Martha and Lazarus were living. And what happens when they get there is everybody's up in turmoil. Everybody's sad and they're broken up inside. They're weeping. Mary and Martha are just beside themselves. Martha hears that Mary's on his way. He's on the outskirts of town. So she rushes out to meet him while Mary's still at home, weeping and grieving and just trying to get over the pain of loss. Martha goes up to Jesus and said, "Jesus, you're too late. Lazarus has died." He says, "Don't worry about it. I'm going to take care of this. He's just sleeping, but not sleeping in the normal sense. He is dead as you understand it, but I'm going to take care of it and I'm going to bring him back." So Martha goes back to Mary, tells her that Jesus is on the way and he's going to take care of everything. Mary immediately gets up and scoots off to meet Jesus. The Jews that are around her, people who are visiting from Bethlehem, all the mourners and the local citizenry that are gathered around her, figure she's going off to mourn Lazarus at his tomb. Something must be up. We're going to go with her to support her. And so they all follow her. And so what happens is Mary meets Jesus, and all the local townspeople who are there to support and grieve with Mary also meet Jesus, all at Lazarus's tomb. And at this time, by the time Jesus gets there, from the time that Lazarus falls sick to the time that Jesus arrives at the tomb, Lazarus has now been dead 4 days. So he's probably, in any other circumstance, he's probably pretty ripe, and he's probably suffering, decomposition of some sort. So not a pretty sight. And everybody's wailing, they're crying, they're completely upset and distraught. And Jesus starts to get upset too, not necessarily upset because he's mourning the loss of his friend. He's empathizing with their sadness, and he's sort of crying along with them because he feels their pain. And that is, if you want to distill everything about Jesus and his mission on earth, it's all about to take on the pain of humanity. And so now he's sort of showing you a small sample of that by taking on their pain, empathizing with them, and crying with them. And he says, okay, I know you're sad. I'm sad too. I feel your pain. We're all feeling it together, but I'm going to take care of this right now. So roll back the stone. He rolls back the stone, or I should say the townspeople rolled back the stone because it's pretty big. And he prays for his father. He says, thank you for bringing me to this location. Thank you for putting me in this position to show the world your power. And let's do this by bringing Lazarus out. So he calls into the tomb. He says, Lazarus, come on out. And people think he's crazy. They think he's nuts. But all of a sudden, Lazarus comes out, still wrapped in his burial bandages and shrouds and all the garments that go with it. And Jesus says, take off all the burial stuff and let him be free. They take him all off. He's healed. He's completely restored. He's alive. And everybody's like gobsmacked. They don't know what to do. And Jesus says, this is why it took so long. He doesn't say it in these words. I'm paraphrasing, but this is why he's saying it. He said, I needed him to die. And then I needed that time of separation because I wanted people to be absolutely sure that in their minds, at least, he was physically dead. So that when I go over there and I bring him back to life, there is no question that, oh, maybe he was just sick and he was almost dead and he got healed on his own. Or maybe he had just died, but it wasn't really. Maybe he was in a coma. He didn't want any uncertainty about Lazarus being dead. He wanted to make sure that everybody was 100% crystal clear that Lazarus was beyond saving, so that when Jesus came, told them to roll back the stone, and then called Lazarus up from the grave, that it was 100% clear to everyone present that it was a resurrection, that Jesus had brought somebody back from the dead. And he wanted that to be the lesson that everybody took away from that. That when Jesus has ultimate power over life and death, he means it. And it's not just words, it's not just metaphor, he means it. So that's the main gist of that miracle. But then, of course, there's a little bit after. And what happens? Word gets back to the Pharisees and the Sanhedrin, and they say, this is getting out of hand. I mean, it was one thing to kind of preach a message of love, peace, and togetherness and oneness with God. It's another thing to start doing miracles. And if word gets back to the Romans, the Roman seniors, the Roman Empire, the Roman leadership, that this guy is here, and then he's also preaching that he is the king of the Jews, they're going to think that we don't know what we're doing. They're going to think that we don't have any knowledge of biblical matters and religion and the Jewish people, and they're going to take away our power. So that's a very important statement. Up to this point, the Jewish leadership, the Pharisees, have all been presenting themselves as enemies against Jesus because they think he's blaspheming, or they think he's possessed by demons or the devil or whatever you want to say about it. But here they show the true colors. Here they sort of take off the mask and they let it slip, and they say out loud what they really mean, which is, if people start believing in Jesus and then the Romans start thinking that Jesus is their true leader, we are going to lose our power and we have to do something about that. So Jesus gets word of this conversation. He knows that the Pharisees are now even more focused on arresting him and killing him. So he decides to kind of lay low for a little while, continue preaching, continue to deliver his message, but do it on the down low, keep it quiet, and keep moving. And so now the Pharisees have issued an order. Anybody finds him, let us know immediately so we can have him arrested. And so now the pressure is turning up, and the heat is on for Jesus to continue and finish his ministry before the Pharisees get to him. So that's it. That's the book of, that's John chapter 11. And one of the biggest miracles that are echoed down through this day, which is the resurrection of Lazarus and what it means. Now, what does that all mean, really? What does that all mean? That means that even physical death is not beyond God's power to undo, that he really does have control of everything. But the difference is timing. And we've said this before in previous chapters. God will do things within his timing, not what we want. Everybody was begging Jesus to come quick. Everybody was begging Jesus to stop Lazarus' illness before he died, not realizing that God was going to allow Lazarus to die so he can bring him back 4 days later to prove a point. And the point is, I have a plan. I have a schedule. It's not going to be what you want. It's going to be what I want, but it's going to work out for everybody. So that's a challenge that everybody has to come up against when it comes to faith in God. And that's one I have a challenge with on a daily basis as well, is understanding that The things you want and even the things you need are not necessarily always in your control. It's within God's control and God's timing. And that sometimes that timing doesn't make sense, or that timing seems outside of what's possible, or even makes, um, or seems impossible, I should say. But in this case, that's what happened. So hopefully this was helpful. I want you to go back and read this. Read John chapter 11. Tell me what you got out of it. If you think this is helpful for me to recap these chapters in the book, give me a thumbs up, let me know. And then after you've read it, leave a comment and let me know what you thought about this chapter. Give me your opinions and what did you come away from it? For me, it's basically Jesus and God together coming up with a timing that, from all outside appearances, doesn't make sense for us lowly mortals, but ultimately it works out for everyone's benefit. And understanding that sometimes that timing feels painful in the moment, but it eventually works out. What do you think about that? Did you get that same message, or did you get something different? Leave a comment down below. Otherwise, I'm Gabe. Thank you for joining Bible Bites. Have a great day. God bless, and I will talk to you soon.